The chandeliers shimmered like falling stars above the grand ballroom, their golden light reflecting off sequined gowns and crystal glasses. Cameras flashed endlessly, capturing every smile, every toast, every inch of luxury that defined the charity gala of the year. At the center table sat billionaire Logan Pierce. Sleek suit, charming grin, confidence exuding like a man who owned the city. Beside him, his wife, Ava Morgan, 6 months pregnant, tried to match his poise despite the weight in her belly and the unease twisting in her chest. To the world, they were perfection, beauty and wealth intertwined, the golden couple everyone envied. But under that shimmering surface, a storm brewed quietly. Ava's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her glass of water. Logan's sharp eyes caught it. "Not wine," he muttered, his smile never faltering for the cameras. "You could at least pretend you're enjoying yourself." His voice was low, cutting. Ava forced a soft reply. "I'm fine, Logan. It's just..." Before she could finish, his temper snapped. The back of his hand connected with her cheek in one swift, shocking motion. The sound sliced through the music, silencing the orchestra mid-note. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The crowd froze, eyes wide, glasses suspended midair. A murmur rippled through the room like a shockwave. "Did he just... Oh my God!" Gasps and camera clicks followed, the scandal unfolding in real time. Ava's hand moved to her burning cheek, her eyes glistening not just with pain but disbelief. She looked around, surrounded by faces she didn't recognize. Faces that suddenly saw her not as a socialite, but as a broken woman in a gilded cage. Logan straightened his jacket, smirking slightly as if nothing had happened. "Overreacting again," he muttered. But across the room, a woman in a black evening gown lowered her champagne glass slowly, her sharp, knowing eyes fixed on Ava. Recognition flashed. Not pity, not shock, but something colder, determined. The woman knew exactly who Ava was, and exactly what she was about to do. Ava stumbled out of the ballroom, her heels clicking unevenly against the marble floor as she fought to steady her breathing. The sting on her cheek burned, but the real pain twisted deeper. Humiliation, betrayal, disbelief. She clutched her belly instinctively, as if shielding her unborn child from the chaos of the world she'd just been exposed to. Behind her, murmurs chased her down the corridor, reporters whispering, guests pretending not to stare, camera flashes like daggers. Her perfect image was shattered, and all she could think was how quickly the man she once loved could destroy her with a single gesture. She stopped in front of the mirror in the powder room. Her reflection looked foreign, makeup flawless, gown pristine, but eyes hollow, rimmed with unshed tears. "Keep it together," she whispered to herself. "Not here. Not now." But memories clawed their way up. The quiet arguments that turned into shouting, the charm that curdled into control, the hands that once caressed turning to fists when she questioned him. Logan had always known how to mask his cruelty behind charm and status. He'd always made sure she looked perfect while he kept her trapped. Her fingers brushed the faint bruise already blooming beneath her skin. And then another memory surfaced. A woman's calm voice, her mother's. "Control the moment before the moment controls you, Ava." Margaret Lawson, former CIA master of reading people, strategist to the core. Few knew Ava was her daughter, and Margaret had trained her quietly in ways no finishing school ever could. Discipline, observation, resilience. As Ava wiped away her tears, her expression hardened. This wasn't the first time she'd been hurt, but it would be the last. Beneath the pain, something shifted, a flicker of resolve. Logan Pierce had no idea what kind of war he had just started. In a quiet, dimly lit control room miles away from the glittering chaos of the gala, a wall of surveillance monitors flickered. On one of them, the shocking image froze. Logan Pierce's hand striking Ava across the face under the blinding chandelier light. Margaret Lawson's jaw tightened, her usually calm eyes turning sharp as steel. Even after years of retirement, the instincts of a CIA operative never dulled. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, analyzing every angle, every face, every reaction in the room. This wasn't just a social scandal. This was an assault on her daughter, and Margaret's blood boiled with controlled fury. Few knew who Margaret truly was. To the world, she was a quiet woman living a peaceful life in a coastal town, her past buried under layers of classified files. But within the agency, the name Margaret Lawson was legend, the woman who led covert extractions, broke code networks, and outsmarted dictators. She had trained spies, disarmed assassins, and dismantled terror cells. Yet tonight she felt powerless, watching her pregnant daughter humiliated in front of the world. A flicker of memory softened her expression for a brief moment. Young Ava, no older than 10, standing in a field, trying to balance in a combat stance. Margaret had been patient then, teaching her daughter how to stay calm under pressure. "Power isn't always about strength, sweetheart," she had said. "It's about control. Read your enemy, then dismantle him without letting him know he's lost." That same lesson now echoed in Margaret's mind as she watched Logan laugh off the incident, pretending it was a joke. She knew men like him, arrogant, entitled, and dangerously confident. But they all had weaknesses. And Margaret had spent a lifetime exploiting those. Within seconds, her old instincts kicked in. She started contacting her former intelligence associates, discreet, loyal operatives who owed her favors. She issued one quiet command: "Keep eyes on Logan Pierce. No alarms, no leaks. We do this clean." Logan had just struck a woman who was far from defenseless. He had provoked the wrath of a mother who once took down nations with a whisper. And now, her target was personal. Ava sat motionless at the gala table, the echo of Logan's slap still stinging across her cheek. The air was heavy with whispers, cameras clicking like vultures circling prey. Yet behind her trembling hands and tearful eyes, something inside her shifted, a cold, quiet focus awakening beneath the humiliation. Her mother's voice whispered in her mind, steady and precise. "Control the room before it controls you." She took a slow, deliberate breath, scanning the glittering chaos with the precision of a trained operative. Every flicker of a phone camera, every nervous waiter, every calculating glance from Logan's business partners became data. Years ago, Margaret had taught her that emotions could be a weapon if channeled correctly. "People will always underestimate a woman in pain," her mother had said during one of their secret lessons, "and that's when you turn pain into power." Ava adjusted her posture, subtly composing herself. Her shaking stopped. Her mind replayed small techniques her mother drilled into her, identifying exits, noting surveillance angles, and remembering faces. Even as Logan barked quietly at her to smile for the cameras, she maintained a mask of calm submission, all while silently mapping the next steps. She picked up her glass, her hand steady now, and adjusted the napkin beside her. A signal she and her mother once used during training, a silent code for "I'm in trouble." She knew Margaret would see it through her network of eyes, and that realization gave her strength. For the first time in months, Ava didn't feel afraid. The humiliation still burned, but it had forged something sharper. Logan thought he'd silenced her with fear. Instead, he'd awakened the woman her mother had trained her to become: patient, strategic, and dangerously aware. Logan's voice sliced through the murmurs of the crowd, his tone dripping with arrogance as he continued to mock Ava under his breath. "You've embarrassed me enough for one night," he hissed, leaning close so only she could hear. "Sit there, smile, and remember who made you." His hand brushed the table, fingers tightening possessively around his wine glass, a warning masked as charm. Ava lowered her gaze, playing the part of the humiliated wife, her trembling replaced by deliberate calm. Logan mistook her silence for submission, never realizing every glance and movement was part of a silent code. She tilted her head slightly, catching sight of a nearby security camera, aware it was being monitored by someone far more dangerous than the restaurant's staff. The same napkin she had placed earlier now shifted a few inches closer to her plate, another signal, one her mother would instantly decode. All around them, guests whispered behind champagne glasses, pretending not to stare. The tension was electric. The click of heels, the hush of silk gowns. The entire gala had turned into a stage for a power struggle no one fully understood. Reporters, always hungry for scandal, hovered at the edges, sensing a headline. Meanwhile, in a nondescript van parked across the street, one of Margaret's contacts relayed updates. Target in sight. Subject unstable, the operative said quietly into a headset. Miles away, Margaret listened, her tone ice-cold as she responded. Maintain distance. We act on my signal. Her plan was unfolding perfectly. Unseen, precise, and surgical. Back inside, Logan leaned closer again, smirking as he whispered, "You'll apologize later." Ava looked up, her eyes meeting his for the briefest moment. Not with fear this time, but defiance. He didn't notice the faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Because as Logan flaunted his control, he had no idea that his downfall was already in motion, orchestrated by a woman he couldn't even see and powered by the wife he had just tried to break. In a discreet command center disguised as a private office, Margaret Lawson's fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, her old CIA precision resurfacing as if she'd never left the field. "Activate Protocol 7, she instructed calmly through her encrypted earpiece. Within moments, her trusted network, former operatives, loyal journalists, cybersecurity experts, sprang into action. Every command she issued was sharp and strategic. Track Logan's financial movements, tap into the gala's surveillance feed, alert select reporters to an upcoming scandal. Margaret wasn't just seeking revenge. She was constructing a flawless operation to dismantle a man who had built his empire on manipulation and fear. As she worked, her mind drifted back to a time long before Ava became a headline. She saw her little girl again, barefoot in the backyard, trying to balance on uneven stones while holding a makeshift wooden sword. Margaret had taught her that day about more than just defense. "You don't win by striking first," she'd said softly, crouching to her daughter's level. "You win by knowing when to strike, and when to make them destroy themselves." Ava had listened with wide, curious eyes, absorbing every word. Those lessons had shaped the woman Ava became, calm under pressure, quietly intelligent, and capable of turning weakness into strength. Margaret had always feared her daughter would one day need to use those lessons. Tonight, that fear had become reality. Her phone buzzed. One of her media contacts had sent an image. Logan's slap, frozen in time, already spreading across social media. Margaret allowed herself a thin, grim smile. "Good," she murmured. "Let the world see who he really is." In the glittering chaos of the gala, Logan still posed for cameras, oblivious to the invisible storm gathering around him. But in the shadows, Margaret's web tightened. Every ally she'd ever cultivated, every connection she'd buried deep within society's power circles, was now active. Logan Pierce had humiliated her daughter in public. Now, the same public would witness his fall, and it would be as spectacular as the empire he'd built on lies. Logan Pierce leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine glass with a self-satisfied grin, convinced the night still belonged to him. The gala guests, still murmuring about the earlier incident, were nothing more than background noise in his mind. "You're overreacting again, Ava," he said, his tone casual, almost teasing. "Everyone saw it. Everyone laughed. Really, why make a scene?" His words dripped with arrogance, as though belittling her would erase the humiliation he had caused. Ava kept her gaze lowered, feigning fragility, letting her body language suggest submission. But inside, every lesson Margaret had drilled into her flashed vividly: how to observe, read intentions, and manipulate the moment. She moved subtly, her fingers brushing against the edge of her napkin, a signal only her mother and trusted allies would recognize. Logan didn't notice. How could he? To him, she was still the delicate, compliant wife who relied on his charm and status to navigate the world. He laughed softly, leaning closer to whisper something cruel and calculated under the guise of private jest. "I hope you know your place tonight," he murmured, unaware that every word, every movement, was being tracked and analyzed. Every ally Margaret had positioned discreetly, every operative waiting in the shadows, was now watching. Logan had built his empire on intimidation and deceit, but the very tactics he relied on to dominate others were being turned against him. The tension in the room was palpable, though no one but Ava and her mother understood why. Guests sensed something beneath the surface, a shift they couldn't quite define, but Logan remained blind. He believed the night, the gala, and even his wife were still under his control. Little did he know, the strings were being pulled by forces he could neither see nor anticipate. Logan's arrogance had blinded him to a simple truth. He had just provoked a woman trained by a CIA legend, and the carefully orchestrated plan for his downfall had already begun to move, silent, precise, and unstoppable. Margaret Lawson's fingers hovered over the secure tablet, her mind moving faster than anyone in the gala could imagine. From her hidden vantage points and contacts, she began executing a carefully rehearsed plan, every step calibrated, precise, and silent. A discreet signal to one of her former operatives in the security team ensured that cameras in the room now had dual feeds, one for the gala's public broadcast and one feeding directly into Margaret's secure network. Every movement Logan made, every aggressive gesture, every whisper of intimidation was being captured in real time. She tapped her tablet again, sending an encrypted message to a trusted journalist. Stay alert. Tonight, the truth surfaces. Another message went to her network of influencers and financial insiders. A subtle nudge that Logan's public persona was fragile, and the slightest exposure could crumble the empire he had spent decades building. Every move was meant to protect Ava, keeping her in the perfect balance of appearing compliant while remaining untouchable. Margaret's mind flashed back briefly to Ava as a teenager, learning how to navigate dangerous situations with precision. She had taught her daughter to always be aware of exits, to observe patterns, to manipulate the environment, and to remain calm while others panicked. Now, she watched Ava do exactly that. Small shifts in posture, the gentle placement of hands, even the tilt of her head. All messages to the unseen mother who had trained her in secrets only a few could understand. Margaret allowed herself a thin, approving smile as Logan continued his arrogance unchecked, unaware that every insult, every belittling comment, and every subtle attempt at control was being recorded. His own gestures were building a digital case that would be impossible to deny. The gala's glittering guests were oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond their perception. They saw only the charming billionaire and the seemingly delicate wife, unaware that the balance of power had already shifted. Margaret's plan ensured that Logan could not lash out without leaving a trail, while Ava remained safe under the precise orchestration of her mother's intelligence network. Every whisper, every flash of a camera, every clink of glass was now part of Margaret's grand design. Logan Pierce had no idea that the walls of his empire, carefully constructed on intimidation and charm, were beginning to collapse, all orchestrated by a woman who had once dismantled governments with nothing but strategy, patience, and perfect execution. Ava straightened in her chair, the fake tremble in her hands gone, replaced by a measured, deliberate calm. Logan Pierce leaned in, his smirk still in place, ready to mock her for the next slip of composure. "Still sulking," he whispered, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Everyone's watching, Ava. You're making a scene again." For a moment, Ava allowed herself the smallest smirk, imperceptible to anyone who didn't know her. "I'm done hiding," she said softly but firmly, her voice carrying a weight that surprised even her. Logan's smirk faltered. "What are you saying?" he asked, his tone suddenly cautious. "I'm saying that tonight I'm not just your wife. I'm me," she continued, her gaze sweeping the table, locking eyes with several high-profile guests. "And I refuse to be humiliated, controlled, or erased anymore." Her words were precise, each syllable measured, as if she had waited years to speak them aloud. Logan's eyes narrowed, disbelief flickering across his face as whispers and shifting attention rippled through the gala. "Bold," he spat, leaning closer, his voice rising. "Do you think anyone will take you seriously?" Ava didn't flinch. Instead, she gestured subtly with her hand toward the center of the room, signaling a waitress who was already subtly aligned with Margaret's network. Cameras flashed, security positions shifted imperceptibly. Logan remained unaware that every move he made now worked against him. "Serious enough that the truth will be seen tonight," she said, her voice steady, projecting confidence she had never dared before. Patrons began to notice the unusual tension, the way Logan's smirk no longer masked fear, the way Ava's presence had transformed from fragile to commanding. Reporters leaned in, sensing the first cracks in his polished image. "Enough," Logan growled, trying to regain control, but his movements were now restricted. Security subtly repositioned, aligned with Margaret's instructions, ensuring he could not lash out without being captured instantly. Every ally Margaret had embedded was ready, invisible but vigilant. Ava's chest rose and fell calmly, her gaze fixed on Logan. The power had shifted, the humiliation balanced now with authority. For the first time in years, Logan Pierce realized that the woman he had tried to dominate was no longer just a pawn in his carefully constructed world. She was a strategist, and her mother's influence had quietly turned the entire gala into a stage for his undoing. Margaret Lawson's fingers danced across her secure tablet, coordinating the final steps of her plan with the precision of a seasoned operative. Every camera feed, every hidden microphone, every attentive journalist embedded in the gala was now part of an invisible web, each strand leading straight to Logan Pierce's unraveling. Evidence of his aggression, his temper, his carefully concealed cruelty, was being captured from every angle. Even the smallest gestures, the tiniest smirk, the controlled intimidation he had relied upon for decades, were now weapons against him. Ava, sitting across from Logan, felt the shift in the room. Cameras flashed incessantly, not for charity or elegance, but to catch him mid-fall, mid-crack in his flawless facade. She leaned slightly forward, her voice carrying clearly, measured and deliberate, addressing not only Logan but the crowd around them. "I will no longer remain silent about the way I've been treated," she said, her words cutting through the murmur like a blade. "The truth about Logan Pierce is public now, and the world deserves to see who he really is." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Guests glanced at one another, uncertain, sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. Reporters snapped photos and whispered into recorders. Social media lit up in real time as bystanders posted images and videos. Logan's slap, his condescending words, every incriminating moment meticulously framed for the world to see. Within minutes, his reputation, carefully cultivated over years, began to crumble. Logan's confident smirk faltered, replaced by panic as he realized the enormity of his miscalculation. His empire of control, built on intimidation and charm, was being dismantled not by rivals or competitors, but by the very people he had underestimated. His wife and the mother he had never known existed. Every move he made now played into their hands. Margaret's subtle orchestration was flawless. Allies blended into the crowd unnoticed, ensuring Logan could not act physically without exposure. Security was strategically positioned, ready to intervene at the first hint of violence. He was trapped by his ego, blind to the invisible forces already in motion. Ava, calm and resolute, looked at him directly, her eyes reflecting both defiance and quiet satisfaction. Logan Pierce had underestimated not only the woman he thought he could control but also the legendary operative who had prepared her for this moment. The walls of his empire, once untouchable, were crumbling in real time, and the world was watching. Logan Pierce sat in his private study hours after the gala, the weight of the evening pressing down on him like a physical force. Screens around him flashed relentlessly. Social media feeds, news alerts, and live footage of the event had turned the gala into a digital spectacle. His public image, once untouchable, had begun to crumble in real time. Investors were calling, their voices clipped and wary, questioning the stability of his leadership. Board members were sending veiled threats about distancing themselves, and family acquaintances who had once sought favor now kept a careful distance. Every connection Logan had relied on to reinforce his dominance was slipping through his fingers. He picked up the phone to call Ava, rehearsing apologies in his mind, but every word felt hollow. I never meant," he began but paused. Even he could sense the futility. She wasn't the frightened, compliant woman he had thought he controlled. She had transformed before the world's eyes, her calm authority and the public support she now commanded rendering his words powerless. Ava had become independent, a force shaped by her own strength and by the calculated guidance of Margaret, the mother he had never realized existed. Meanwhile, Margaret oversaw every movement with meticulous precision. Contacts in law enforcement, media, and security had all been instructed to ensure that Logan could neither retaliate nor manipulate the narrative further. Every potential loophole, every misstep he might attempt to exploit, had been anticipated. The situation was contained, secure, and entirely controlled, a testament to Margaret's experience and foresight. Public sympathy for Ava surged, her pregnancy symbolizing resilience, courage, and the promise of a new beginning. Stories of Logan's abusive tendencies spread across platforms, reinforcing the narrative that he had crossed an irredeemable line. Meanwhile, Ava quietly began to plan her next steps, knowing that the dismantling of Logan's power was only the beginning of reclaiming her life fully. Logan, for the first time in years, felt powerless. The empire he had built with intimidation, charm, and manipulation was cracking, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Each missed call, each public backlash, each whisper of doubt against him underscored his downfall. Ava's courage, Margaret's orchestration, and the eyes of the world had stripped him of control, leaving him exposed, humbled, and facing the consequences of a lifetime of arrogance. Ava and Margaret moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, their final plan unfolding like a carefully choreographed operation. Every detail had been anticipated: the timing, the witnesses, the evidence, and the optics. Ava's calm demeanor belied the storm of determination beneath her composed exterior. Margaret, ever the strategist, coordinated the flow of information, ensuring that every incriminating detail about Logan Pierce's abusive and controlling behavior reached the right people at exactly the right moment. First came the boardroom. Key investors and business partners received carefully compiled dossiers, complete with video footage from the gala, corroborating witness statements, and a timeline of Logan's private abuses. The documentation was thorough, irrefutable, and legally airtight. Logan's professional credibility began to crumble almost instantly. His allies who had once defended his every decision now shifted uneasily, calculating the risk of association. Margaret's subtle influence ensured that none of Logan's attempts to discredit the evidence would succeed. Next, the social exposure. Media contacts released snippets of the gala footage online, capturing Logan's public humiliation and juxtaposing it against his private abuse of Ava. The narrative spread like wildfire. Journalists, bloggers, and social media users amplified the story, fueling a storm of public outrage. Logan's reputation, built over decades of charm and cunning, was unraveling in a way that left him powerless to intervene. Throughout it all, Ava remained composed, a living testament to the lessons Margaret had instilled in her. She moved deliberately, making every public statement measured, confident, and unwavering. Her CIA-style training, observation, patience, and strategic thinking, was now visible to anyone paying attention. Logan, once dominant and untouchable, was now the one on the defensive, forced into the humiliating position of responding to accusations he could neither deny nor escape. The culmination came at a press conference carefully arranged by Margaret, where Ava faced the cameras with poise. She spoke of courage, resilience, and reclaiming power without resorting to violence. Logan, seated behind her, could only watch as the world judged him, humiliated and humbled in equal measure. The tension in the room was electric, but Ava's calm authority turned the shock into triumph. In that moment, the full weight of justice was felt. Logan Pierce had underestimated his wife and her legendary mother, and now the consequences of his arrogance and cruelty were undeniable. Ava's revenge was complete, not with fists or rage, but with strategy, intelligence, and a precision only a CIA-trained mind could orchestrate. Months later, sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of a quiet, sunlit room, casting a warm glow over Ava as she cradled her newborn child in her arms. The soft coos and gentle breaths of the baby filled the space, a rhythmic reminder of life, hope, and new beginnings. Margaret Lawson sat nearby, her eyes shining with quiet pride, fingers brushing gently over the infant's tiny hand. The bond between mother and daughter was stronger than ever, forged in both love and the trials of the past months. Ava had emerged not only unbroken but empowered, her confidence and resilience radiating in every measured movement. Logan Pierce was conspicuously absent. The empire he had once ruled with arrogance and intimidation had crumbled under the weight of his own actions, leaving him isolated and humbled. His absence was a silent testament to the consequences of his abuse, both public and private. Ava did not miss him. Instead, she focused on the laughter and coos of her child, the unwavering support of her mother, and the future she was determined to build. As the days passed, Ava began to consider the larger impact of her journey. Inspired by Margaret's lessons in courage, strategy, and the importance of protecting the vulnerable, she envisioned an initiative to support and empower women who had suffered abuse. Legal aid, self-defense training, mentorship programs, a structured path for women to reclaim their lives safely and confidently. Each idea felt purposeful, a way to honor both her own struggles and the mother who had taught her to survive and thrive. In the quiet of that evening, Ava gazed out the window, the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Margaret rested a hand on her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of triumph and survival. The world outside could never touch the sanctuary they had created together, a haven of courage, love, and justice. Ava smiled, realizing that the trials she had endured were not the end of her story, but the beginning of one defined by strength, empowerment, and hope. In that tender moment, family, resilience, and justice were celebrated quietly, yet powerfully, a heartwarming victory over a past that could no longer control them.